Here to go to Matthew Stapleton on Blue-Black Eldrazi, Gerry Thompson on his Dredgevine deck. Matthew has kept 7, but Gerry is on 5.
Ooh, that's rough. Well, Gerry's a good player. You know, when I think of myself playing against Gerry, I just kind of assume that he's got an extra card because he's such a good player. So, you know, we can kind of think of him as a 6-card hand.
Well, he did get to do a scry. I'm not quite sure what he did with it. Maybe we can find that out.
So now we're up to a 6.5 card hand.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I mean, it's like he didn't even mulligan at all.
Not at all. But Gerry did lead on a... It's like he bottomed the scry. Gerry did lead on a Verdant Catacombs and passed. Matthew Stapleton is just going to fetch out a Watery Grave, and we're probably going to see either a Cog or a discard spell.
Or Serum Visions. Smoothing out that draw. So this is really, really great for him. For a deck that is looking to have their draw come up in a certain order, they want to get their mana first and their payout second. Serum Vision is a great card to make sure that that actually happens.
Absolutely. So we're going to wait on Matthew to finish up his scry here. Gerry is going to fetch out a Verdant, we use his Verdant Catacombs to get an Overgrown Tomb, and then take a draw for his turn. Looks like Matthew went 1 top, 1 bottom. I did see an Eye of Ugin in that scry, so I'm not sure where he sent it, but I'd be willing to bet on the top since that's such an important card in his deck, and it looks like he did just draw an Eye of Ugin for the turn after Gerry played a Blackleaf Cliffs and passed the turn back. So he doesn't have a whole lot going on. He does have a lot of cheap interactive cards in his deck, but just not much is happening. And
Matthew's really doing exactly what he wants to do. Gerry doesn't have any pressure. Nothing's really going on his end. And Matthew has the Serum Visions to take advantage of that opportunity to just sort of sculpt his draw.
Now, one thing to notice here is that Matthew is playing this Relic of Progenitus in his main deck as a way to exile cards to take advantage of the processor mechanic.
Seems pretty good against Dredgevine, though.
And like we mentioned earlier, the splash damage is real, and Gerry is playing a deck built around Dredgevine, Golgari Gravetroll, and Gurmag Angler.
Yep.
So that this does not bode well for Mr. Gerry Thompson.
Absolutely not. I would be surprised to see Matthew, well, so long as he knows what Gerry's on, I would be surprised to see Matthew pop his Relic of Progenitus unless Gerry targeted it with an Abrupt Decay.
Absolutely. So Gerry is going to Faithless Looting on his turn, which is one of the best cards in this deck, actually. I know from experience playing it in the past, playing against it with BBD, Faithless Looting just felt like the card that could give it velocity and actually be able to do something. But again, that Relic is going to be a thorn in his side.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough with Gerry because he kind of wants to make the graveyard juicy enough for Matthew to be forced to pop his Relic so that Gerry can really start filling his graveyard. But in order for Gerry to do that, he needs to hold enough back so that he has stuff to put in his graveyard afterwards.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be a pretty delicate dance on Gerry's side.
Now, a big problem with that is that this Eldrazi deck plays 4 Relic of Progenitus, and Matthew has 2.
Yeah.
So he's going to be able to eat 2 cards a turn, has protection to stop anything crazy from happening, and it's just going to work it. And we see here Gerry decided to draw for his turn instead of dredging that Golgari Gravetroll. It's just too much risk to get rid of multiple copies of Vengevine.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically the 2 Relic are going to be the most difficult thing for Gerry to slog through in this game. That is sort of the focal point. That's what Gerry's thinking about right now. Gerry's probably not thinking about an Oblivion Sower from his opponent or anything like that. He's just thinking about these Relics.
So Gerry decided just to play a Golgari Gravetroll and pass. Matthew, instead of just whittling down the graveyard with his Relic of Progenitus, has decided to just pop it and just get a big use out of it. So now on his turn, he's going to be able to cast a big old Eldrazi.
A blue one.
I'm not sure what
That's
what that
the
is.
5-1, the Drowner of Hope.
Drowner of Hope, okay.
Yeah.
So he's able to...
So a really big board presence, a 5-5 on the board, and then 2 1/1 tokens.
Wow, that's real big. He can sack a...
Going tall and wide.
Yeah, he can sack a Scion to tap something if he needs to. It is important to note here that Urborg does give Gerry additional black mana from his Ghost Quarter, but I'm not quite sure what he can do with it yet. He's going to need to piece something together. Now, Gerry does have Lightning Axe in his deck. It looked like he had one in his hand, which conveniently kills that Drowner of Hope, but the damage is already going to be done since we're going to have 2 Scions on the battlefield, which will help ramp us.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think a lot of this is made possible by those Serum Visions. It'll be interesting with this Black Eldrazi deck to see what is the best color to pair with it, because we saw white, now we're seeing blue, maybe some of the other colors are available, but you can really see how the Serum Visions help smooth out your draw, streamline things, and Matthew's basically able to make it so that this game is playing out exactly how he wants it to.
Absolutely. So we saw Gerry there went to his combat step. Matthew sacked an Eldrazi Scion to tap down the Golgari, or the Lotleth Troll. Gerry was able to cash in that Lightning Axe to take care of the Drowner of Hope and get in for 2 with his 2/1 zombie, his Gravecrawler, and then Ghost Quarter the Eye of Ugin from Matthew Stapleton to try and shut off some of his mana. Since again, with Urborg on the battlefield, that's just Mishra's Workshop for Eldrazi.
Yeah, and it's really up to Gerry to be aggressive in this matchup. Matthew, with those Relic of Progenitus, is going to be able to shut down all the really powerful things that Gerry can do, but Matthew still has powerful things that he can do that Gerry can't really do anything about. So the pressure is really on Gerry this game to sort of get the damage in early and as fast as possible, and you can really see how he's aggressively using his removal spells, his land destruction spells, and is really trying to push as much damage as he can as fast as possible.
Absolutely. So looks like Matthew has found an Eldrazi temple. He was able to get a land off that Ghost Quarter, was an island, and it looks like we're going to start seeing
big.
We're going to see some Blight Herders here. So
oh man,
he's going to process 2 cards, get 3 1/1s, and next turn, I think we're going to be seeing an Ulamog.
Yeah, and this is really showing the strength of the Eldrazi deck. The first couple of turns, it really didn't do anything to impact the board, but then as soon as it got its mana online, it starts throwing these haymakers on the board that just go wide and tall at the same time, and it can catch up so fast, and then once it's caught up, it starts dominating the board, and that's how we see here. I mean, I don't know what Gerry's going to do in this situation, but it really doesn't look like he has any profitable attacks. And if he doesn't have any profitable attacks, he's sort of looking at a slow death.
Absolutely. On top of that, the mulligan to 5, he was a little short on mana. Matthew did process some lands back into Gerry's graveyard, which he was able to get back with the Life from the Loam he found on the top of his deck, but he's still looking pretty bad at this point. That Blight Herder, it's just so good. You get a 5/5 plus the 3/1/1s.
Yeah, it's just a lot of power
it's like
and
Cloud
toughness.
Goat Ranger on steroids.
Yeah, oh yeah. And he's still got the Relic. I mean, he popped the 1, but he's still got the other. So Gerry really has his hands tied in this matchup.
So Matthew is able to find another Eldrazi temple, and we're counting a bunch. I think we're going to see Papa Ulamog.
And the beats just keep coming.
Ugh.
Now we've got that Savage Uppercut coming on the board.
Looks like we got the cash trigger.
Yep. Oh, you have 2 creatures, and I have 2 things I can exile? I think I'll choose those.
Oh, man. Now he's going to be able to get in for 7 points of damage this turn, and they're exiled. It's just not looking good for Gerry here.
Yeah, and normally Gerry, when he falls behind, he does have ways of climbing back out of it because he can get multiple veg finds out of the graveyard and whatnot. His deck has some powerful things it can do and some powerful synergies, but with that Relic of Progenitus, he's just not able to actually do those things. So the ways that Gerry would have to catch up are kind of disabled right now. That Relic of Progenitus is really playing a key lead in this matchup.
Yeah, and looking through Gerry's sideboard here, he has some like Ancient Grudge type cards, but there really isn't anything to just turn off those relics, like a Pithy Needle or something of that nature. So I think it's going to be real rough here, and Gerry's going to be hoping to dodge those Relic of Progenitus out of Matthew.
Yeah, well, first of all, he's got to make sure he keeps 7 cards. It's hard to win with 5.
That's true.
Even if you are Gerry Thompson and your 5-card hand is more like 6.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboards here and see what we can try and come up with here for Gerry. So he has 2 Ghost Quarter, 3 Ancient Grudge, 1 Nod of the Bone, 4 Thoughtseize, 2 Dark Blast, 1 Life from the Loam, and 2 Slaughter Games. So what do you think he's going to do here?
So I like the Ghost Quarter because having some sort of land destruction plan against his opponent so that he can't get those really big fatties online, I think is going to be important for Gerry. Along with that, he can consider the Life from the Loam. It seems like he's already got some number of them main. The Life from the Loam is pretty slow, and so depending on how fast he thinks the matchup will be, he may not want more of them, but that's certainly a card that we can look at as a possibility. Also, the Thoughtseizes are really good. If you can't disrupt their mana enough, sometimes they just have a lot of mana and only 1 or 2 fatties, and if you can Thoughtseize them before they're cast, that can be a really great way to deal with them. And then finally, the Ancient Grudges seem like they have some utility. Not sure if they'll be an all-star, but those Relic of Progenitus are really, really hard to deal with.
Yeah, they just worked Gerry that first game.
Yeah, they did.
He was on 5 at a disadvantage, but still had some play with being able to looting away that Golgari, Grave Troll, and Vengevine.
Yeah, and I mean, if Matthew only had 1 or 2 Relics of Progenitus, then Gerry might be able to say, most of the time I can develop enough of a board to not worry about a top deck relic later on. But the fact that Matthew has so many of the relics, he'll just have them consistently, and Gerry has to have a way of, dealing with them.
So on Matthew's side, we've got 1 Ghost Quarter, 1 Spellskite, 1 Void Winnower, 1 Dismember, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 All's Dust, a Negate, 2 Ruin Processor, 2 Thoughtseize, and 2 Vampiric Link. What do you think Matthew's going to do here?
So I think generally speaking, Matthew's deck sort of lines up pretty well against Gerry's, so he may not want to sideboard too much. Also, his deck is another deck that's based around a lot of synergies, so he doesn't want to water down his strategy too much either. I think that a random Dismember can be good to make sure he doesn't get rushed down. Surgical Extraction can certainly be good against the Graveyard synergy deck. Also, All is Dust is something that he may want to make use of if he thinks that he's going to fall behind on the board.
Especially since you can cast it on the cheap with Eldrazi Temple.
Yeah,
it is tribal Eldrazi.
Yeah. And it doesn't kill any of his stuff.
Yep.
So that's really good too. And then, you can also make an argument for just having more fatties and essentially treat it like a mid-range mirror where you're just out mid-ranging your opponent and bringing in the Void Winner and Rune Processor. So there's a lot of things that are on the table. I don't think he's going to bring all of those. He may bring in more disruption when he's on the play and more of his own plan A stuff. Or, more disruption when he's on the draw and more plan A stuff when he's on the play.
I definitely like that idea. Now, one of the great things about Modern is that you can play decks like this and just have lots and lots of fun.
Yeah.
And we do also have a fun-friendly event that you can try and get into your own store. As you can get in the StarCityGames.com game night. So this week in January, we're featuring the exclusive Grizzly brand tokens and pin. So you're going to get 8 foils and 2 pins each week when you have your local game store sign up for our game night to run it there, and these things are pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a fun time. You don't have to worry about facing Gerry Thompson and having it be super cutthroat.
Unless you live in Roanoke.
Don't go to game night there.
When I was there, we used to all go to game night.
Oh, man, that's great. Well, you know what? I bet you Gerry is a well-spirited person, and he brings some fun things.
It is fun and friendly. He'd probably play Dredgevine. Just bring your relics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in February, we're going to have Magus of the Moo, and I really like this one. I wish we had some milk on there somewhere, but
oh man, that would be great.
Magus of the Moo is pretty good.
Would it be red milk? That may creep some people out. I don't know.
Strawberry milk.
Strawberry. There we go. Strawberry chocolate milk. Something like that.
And again,
that sounds delicious.
That's in February, and then in March we have Grim Llamamancer, and I've been told that this one has been named Tina.
Oh, that's a reference to
Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah. I like that too.
Eat your food. And again, this is going to be every week in March. So again, game night is just a fun, friendly event. Make sure you talk to your local game store to try and get set up with it. Store owners can call our in-store programs or email us at gamenight@starcitygames.com to get started.
Yeah, just have fun and get some of that sweet Star City swag.
Absolutely.
That's the good stuff.
So let's take a look here. Looks like we've already gotten into game 2. Gerry has got a couple lands and a lot of Troll in play. Matthew has already cast a Serum Visions and is going into his second turn. We're going to get an Inquisition. It's not the most stellar card you're going to be playing against a discard deck. However...
And so Gerry had the unique opportunity to discard the one card that Inquisition could hit so that the Inquisition essentially whiffs, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually is, it's not bad here. Because the next turn, Gerry could potentially Wayfinder into a Gurmag Angler, into some Vengevines if he hits them off the way. Oh, no, that wouldn't work. You should have to exile them. There's kind of a little bit of a little tension with the strategy here between the Gurmag Anglers and the Vengevines in the decks, but I imagine you can get some explosive turns off of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the part of the idea is your graveyard gets so rich that
it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can just sort of pick and choose whatever you want. I do think that Gerry's off to a pretty good start. Matthew has a decent draw, but it doesn't look like he's going to have a big fatty coming out on the following turn, and Gerry's going to have an opportunity to develop his board, get on the board before his opponent, and hopefully get some pressure going. Which
I think is more important in this matchup than it was against the black-white Eldrazi deck.
Yeah.
Being blue-black, you don't have Path Exile or Lingering Souls, so you can't really handle creatures or gum up the board until you start dropping those processors or Eldrazi creatures that are going to give you tokens. So we see Matthew here has an Eldrazi Temple into an Expedition map. Gerry's got to fetch and just Make a 5/5, and we're going to attack you for 4.
Who needs that graveyard? You're going to Relic of Progenitus it anyway.
Absolutely. I'm going to use it before you can take advantage of it and just bash you for 5. Now, let's see here. Matthew could play an Eldrazi Temple and then cast a Blighthearter, but he doesn't have it. We're just going to get a little Ashiok Nightmare Weaver action.
So this seems a little, to me, like a sacrificial Ashiok. I don't think Matthew expects this to live. I think he's just playing it to sort of buy time until he can have a play that is more impactful and catches him up on the board.
Yeah, but it looks like he does have an Eye of Ugin in his hand, so he could potentially have access to 6 mana next turn for some Eldrazi spell.
So I see 2 Vengevines in Gerry's hand. If he can get a... he does have the 4th land. So this is a lot of pressure coming up really fast. He may ignore the Ashiok. Wait, how much damage is this? This is just dead.
Just 14.
That's just lethal. Wow. Gerry Thompson, ladies and gentlemen, just doing it right.
Just Lotleth Troll.
Yeah.
Just getting in there.
Yeah. Who needs sideboard cards?
Yeah, I don't know. Jeez. So we didn't see any sideboard from Gerry.
I mean, that was a short game. We didn't see much of anything other than Gerry, butchering his opponent, essentially. I mean, the poor little guy, he just had a Planeswalker and some lands.
Yeah, that's just, man. That game was over real fast.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, I guess that's Gerry's way of dealing with Relic of Progenitus.
Yeah, you just attack them with Lotleth Troll.
And I mean, that actually highlights one of my favorite things about playing a deck that is attacking with creatures is there's actually a way that you can solve a lot of problems by just being aggressive, because you just decrease the frequency that you see problematic cards on the other side of the board. Absolutely.
Now, one of the things that I really like about this Blue-Black Eldrazi deck is that it's not even fully powered yet. Oath of the Gatewatch is coming up with a bunch of new powerful Eldrazi.
One in particular,
but there are quite a few in there. And coming up, we're going to have the Oath of the Gatewatch pre-release.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be in the Roanoke area, you can come to the StarCityGames.com Game Center and get your Oath of the Gate Hop playmat that are free for anybody playing in any of our pre-release flights. It's January 16th to 17th. Go.starcitygames.com/pre-release to get details and to pre-register. And this is a limited edition playmat. Once the weekend's over, any additional playmats left over are going to be put on the website for sale on Monday, and then after that, they're gone.
Yeah, and these things are really sweet. I mean, I know I have a ton of these just from going to a lot of Star City events, and I've given them to my parents, I've given them to my siblings, I've given them to friends. Everyone loves them. And I mean, even people who aren't even Magic players, they just think they're cool.
Yeah, I definitely really like the Carrot Hedron, and my favorite is the Chandra. Looks like
a little dragon on the side. Yeah, I was looking at it too. It's like you have all these cute little farm animals, and then you have Chandra, who's just a fire-breathing dragon. I mean,
it's just great.
Yeah, I like that. Good flavor.
Got to keep Zendikar safe.
So
again, Oath of the Gate Hop is the parody name for the playmat. Go.starcitygames.com/pre-release to check that out. Make sure you pre-register. I do know from experience when I was in Roanoke, these flights fill up fast.
Yeah,
so
I bet. Everyone wants that sweet Star City swag.
Yeah, why not?
I'm telling you.
It's free.
Yeah.
You literally pay $0 extra for this playmat.
And they let you play Magic.
And they just give you cards. You get Oath of the Gatewatch cards and a playmat.
Man, I wish I lived in Roanoke.
I used to.
Oh, man, why'd you move?
Well, because I got engaged.
Oh, man. Sounds rough.
Oh, no, it's actually real nice.
Yeah, I believe you.
So we're here in Game 3. Matches tied up 1-1. Gerry Thompson on Dredgevine, Matthew Stapleton on Blue-Black Eldrazi. I believe Gerry is going to be on the draw. It's like both players have kept their hands, and Matthew has that dreaded Relic of Progenitus.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just the dream start for him. I mean, all he wants. I mean, this is also extra good on turn 1 because you can just tap it to exile 1 card at a time. And if you're... So it makes a big difference to have it out earlier just because you get to activate it more frequently.
Absolutely. I imagine that Gerry's hope this time around is going to be the same as Game 2. Lotleth Troll early, beat face fast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly... Well, this is the other side, is Gerry, instead of curving out with a stream of creatures, and he can still do that on the following turns, but he can, sort of pick apart Matthew's draw like you would any other ramp strategy.
Absolutely. Now, it looks like we've got a forest off of the Verdant Catacombs into a Thoughtseize, made possible by Urborg. And Matthew is going to reveal Eldrazi Temple, Polluted Delta, Cavernous Souls, Wasteland Strangler, and an Oblivion Sower. So along with that Eldrazi Temple, Matthew has 3 mana available next turn that he can start getting some attacks on with that Wasteland Strangler, but it's also going to help him ramp into that Oblivion Sower which is already going to have one land they can put in the battlefield after this Verdant Catacombs gets exiled out of Gerry's graveyard.
Yeah, I have to imagine that Gerry's probably going to make him discard the Oblivion Sower. If he makes him take the Wasteland Strangler, though, that reveals a lot about his hand. That means that Gerry is probably going to be looking to get ahead on the board earlier, may have another discard card for the Oblivion Sower, and just doesn't want to have to fight through a random body on the ground on turn 3.
Absolutely. So it looks like he did take the Wasteland Strangler. Now Matthew used his relic on end step instead of with the Thoughtseize on the stack, so he got the Thoughtseize instead of the Verdant Catacombs, which is relevant because Gerry has a Life from the Loam in his hand. But Matthew's on his turn. After taking a draw, we're going to fetch out an island with that Polluted Delta. We're going to Serum Visions, so draw a card. He's going to scry 2, get a little bit more information, and I do see an Eye of Ugin that he just quickly put on top of his deck, which again is going to be that Mishra's Workshop for Eldrazi now that he has the Urborg in play.
2 relics.
That second relic is just going to be backbreaking for Gerry.
That is a big deal. Although, like we saw in the previous game,
we don't have a Lotleth Troll. Yeah, we got the Lotleth Troll.
So, you know, step 2 complete. Turn 1 discard, turn 2 creature. It's going to be a little rough, though, because Gerry basically can't use his graveyard, and that's where a lot of the power from his deck comes from. So right now he's not facing anything on the other side of the board that can play any kind of defense, and he, with the information he has, he knows that there's not going to be anything until an Oblivion Sower or something that's recently drawn. So Gerry is going to have a little bit of time to get in some damage, and we'll see if he can make the most of it.
Well, that Eye of Ugin is going to bring an Oblivion Sower next turn. Gerry does have a Ghost Quarter in his hand, it seems, so he can take care of the Eye of Ugin the turn after it happens. But this Satyr Wayfinder is going to hit 4 juicy creatures and brick completely on lands for Gerry, and that's gonna it has to sting. I definitely think that he wants to be drawing those Vengevines to get in the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, normally Vengevine is a card that you want to see in the graveyard because this deck is built on having a Vengevine go from your graveyard straight into play. But with those Relic of Progenitus, the Vengevines are basically on lockdown.
So it looks like Matthew is going to pop his Relic on Gerry's end step. Going to exile all graveyards and draw a card. Looks like he picked up an Expedition map, but this Eye of Ugin is going to power out
and that's
an Oblivion Sower, and that's going to get at least a land out of Gerry's exile, potentially more here.
And that Eye of Ugin is essentially producing 3 mana, which is a big deal because
Mishra's Workshop,
it can tap because of the Urborg for a black, and then it makes all of your Eldrazi cost 2 less.
And we see here the turn before Gerry played his Satyr Wayfinder and didn't hit a land, but the top 4 from the Oblivion Sower gave him 3 lands.
Wow, and just straight into a Blight Herder? Can he do this?
One of them entered the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, he would have been able to.
Yeah.
That would have been
Blackleaf Cliffs.
Yep.
And I mean, that still illustrates how explosive this deck can be. All it needs to do is get up to an Oblivion Sower, and then in certain ways it practically has infinite mana.
Yeah. Now, the real sweet thing with this deck is you can actually Oblivion Sower on turn 3, which is real disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a Relic of Progenitus early, maybe you get to hit a couple lands, but if you just need to go Urborg into Eldrazi Temple into Eye of Ugin, it's 6 mana, and that is filthy.
Yeah. That's a lot like Tron.
It definitely is. This deck definitely feels a lot like Tron, but I feel like it's not as easy to disrupt this deck's mana than it is to disrupt Tron's mana.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's pretty interesting, though, because we have this deck, we have the Tron deck, and we have Amulet Bloom, which we still haven't seen on camera, but all 3 of them are essentially big mana decks. But what's cool about it is they're getting big mana in completely different ways, completely different set of lands.
Absolutely. Now, the one thing that translates across all 3 of them is that they're kind of weak to Blood Moon. Tron has more game than the other 2 decks do.
Yep.
But this deck gets hurt pretty badly by Blood Moon, as well as anything that's like a Sowing Salt type card that's very good against both decks.
Yeah, I remember, I believe it was last weekend at an open, we saw this deck get played and it hit the newer Sowing Salt. That's slightly easier to cast.
The Devoid one, 3 in a red.
Exactly, and it basically shut down the Eldrazi deck. So Gerry doesn't have access to a card like that, but that if you're looking for sideboard cards against this Eldrazi deck, that's certainly one you want to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. So we've got Gerry here is going to use his Ghost Quarter to take care of that Eye of Ugin. Again, he still gets a land, but it's not producing 3 mana for his Eldrazi spells.
Yeah, even still, though, I mean, in a lot of ways, the damage is already done because that Oblivion Sower hit the field. You look at each half of the board, And the amount of mana that Matthew has is so much greater than Gerry. And
Absolutely.
it really, really illustrates how this Eldrazi deck functions, how it leverages an advantage into a victory. It just gets so much mana, and it overwhelms the board.
And we haven't even seen it get to a point where it's activating Ayavugan to go find more creatures.
Yeah.
So we've got Gerry here is going to try a Life from the Loam. That's going to prompt Matthew to use his last Relic of Progenitus. And at this point, Gerry just kind of has to hope to draw into some good stuff.
And that was Gerry's
Lootings and whatnot.
Yeah, that was Gerry's whole turn, was casting that Life from the Loam. One of the big advantages of having a lot of mana is you can do multiple things on his turn. Gerry has multiple cards in his hand, but he only had enough mana to cast one of them. And he just cannot catch up by playing one card a turn.
Yep, so he just got to pass after a Stomping Ground. Matthew's going to take his turn. Looks like he does have a Blighthearter in his hand, but he's counting up mana.
Yeah, figuring out how to make the most of it.
Might be looking at an Ulamog here if we got one. That's 7, 8, 9, 10. If he has an Ayavugan, he could cast Ulamog here.
And this is always a dangerous situation. Gerry is definitely the aggressor. Matthew is definitely the bigger deck. And as soon as Matthew starts attacking, that's sort of the big indicator that things are looking really bad for Gerry.
It looks like there's another Ayavugan in this scry off of his Serum Visions.
Does he want it?
So I think he's going to keep them both on top. It's not preordained. Don't draw a card.
Yeah.
Looks like he kept both. So there's a Dismember, which is a good way to handle Lotleth Troll, and then an Ayavugan underneath.
So that's actually a really great combination of cards to have, because the Ayavugan essentially guarantees that he'll have an offense, and the Dismember guarantees that he'll have a defense. So he's really got all of his bases covered.
So this Blighthearter is going to process a couple cards, bring some 3/1/1s along with it. It's going to shore up the ground now. Lotleth Troll does have Trample, but Blighthearter is a 4/5, which is pretty beefy to attack through.
So is Blighthearter the one where when you process something, you gain life?
No, that's a Blighthearter is that you process and you get 3/1/1s.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so just a lot on the board. This is just so much for Gerry to slog through. His Lotleth Troll has Trample, so there is going to be a way that he can get through some damage, but you can just see just the raw amount of power and toughness on each side. Gerry has a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, so Gerry's going to be able to dredge here with this Golgari Grave Troll, but I'm not sure what he's hoping to hit. Maybe a Faithless Looting?
Well, the one good thing is that his Lotleth Troll is going to be able to block and regenerate, so that's going to be pretty relevant. And there's not a Relic of Progenitus on the board yet, so Gerry can actually start to get his graveyard synergies going, and there may be a way that he can catch up.
Yeah, I can imagine at this point Gerry might want to try and get to a point where he's casting that Grave Troll and making a large enough creature so that he has multiple regenerators to try and shore up the ground and maybe start pushing through damage at some point. But Matthew has that Ayavugan 2 cards down on the top of his deck. At some point he's going to get Ugin and cast it, or get Ulamog and cast it, and he is hungry.
Yeah, Gerry doesn't know what's on the top of Matthew's deck the way that we do, so he doesn't know there's an Ayavugan and then a Dismember. And the Ayavugan is going to be something that Gerry can't really deal with.
Yeah, he just can't afford to play around it at this point.
And the Dismember is just going to take out a Lotleth Troll. So
it looks like the Gravecrawler was cast from the graveyard since Lotleth Troll is a zombie. It's on the battlefield. We're going to send in. He's going to make it a 5/4, and I imagine he's going to regenerate it.
Yeah, and because of Urborg, he can regenerate it. He's got that black mana.
All right, so here we have 4 mana for Gerry.
And you can see that Matthew is just focused on preserving his life total. He just, blocked.
He just has to feel like he has inevitability here, knowing there's another Ayavugan coming.
Right.
He's got a Dismember here to handle the Lotleth Troll. He still has that Oblivion Sower.
Yeah, Matthew is...
he's just going to Expedition Map now so he can get it on the battlefield.
Well, that speeds it up.
Definitely does.
Who needs to draw it next turn when we can draw it this turn?
Yeah, let's just do it now.
I mean, when you have this much mana...
It's my land. I want it now.
These are the kind of plays you can make.
Absolutely. See if he has a follow-up. He's tapping lands.
I think he might have had another Drowner of Hope.
Another Blighthearter or a Drowner?
Yeah, Drowner of Hope.
Ooh. Just another 5/5 along with a couple 1/1s.
Yeah, and now even if Gerry gets a creature that's hard to deal with, that Drowner of Hope can potentially lock it down by tapping it.
Just tapping stuff down. So now here we're going to see Matthew's going to attack with his Oblivion Sower and his 3/1/1s.
Yeah, Gerry's in a rough spot. He's starting to run out of things that he can realistically draw. But, he's Gerry Thompson, so we'll see what he can do.
Never count him out.
Yeah, and he has access to his graveyard. So
he does. There's the Faithless Looting, so step 1 has been achieved.
yeah. I think 2 Vengevines were exiled from before.
Yes.
So he's still got 2 in his deck. The Gravecallers, unfortunately, don't play any defense.
Yeah, they can't block. Let's see what Gerry's going to do. I think he's going to flash back this Faithless Looting and
That's all he can do.
Hope to find something nice.
I mean, he's got no cards in hand. I think he's just trying to decide if he wants to dredge and how specifically he wants to tap his mana.
Yeah, this is going to be really rough because of that Drowner of Hope.
Yeah.
Even if he is able to get something on the battlefield, say, a Gurmag Angler or whatnot, Matthew can just tap it and attack for the win.
Yeah. Yeah, we may see a concession, and there it is. Yep. Man, Matthew takes down the Goliath.
Yeah, that was rough for Gerry. It looked like he just really didn't have much going on.
It also seems like a bad matchup.
But the Relic of Progenitus is just so good.
Yeah, the fact that there's all these relics running around is really going to bode poorly for Gerry.
Yeah, that's real rough. I imagine that anybody that decides to sleeve up one of these Eldrazi decks just hopes to play against Dredgevine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Dredgevine is a pretty uncommon deck. It's good, but it's certainly something that operates around the fringe. So I don't think that many people are expecting to face it, but it's certainly, they're not going to complain when they do face it.